I'm a huge advocate of outbound, cold outbound, where you're using LinkedIn, which is one of the most powerful tools for anything to do with B2B, as a mechanism to start getting more conversations with people. And then when you have those conversations, building rapport and creating win-win outcomes. So I'm going to share the 5 things that I encourage you to realize as you're stepping into the space of cold outbound, or you're just going to do it in a more effective way. Because I've been doing this for years. I've been doing this before people were calling it cold outbound, where I called it Hail Mary marketing, where I would identify someone that I wanted to get in touch with. I'll never forget it. There was this really significant icon in the space of personal development. I read all of his books. He was very meaningful to me, and I was just observing what he was doing. And what I observed was there was a huge gap in his offer structure. And I thought to myself, I think I can help him. And this was during the days when I was running a marketing agency. So I wasn't exactly sure what his email address was. So I guessed, because there was no tools like this at the time, 12 different variations of whatever I thought his email would be. I sent the same email to these 12 different email addresses. 11 of them bounced back within seconds, and one seemed to have been somewhere out there in the ecosystem of email communication. I wasn't sure if it would get to him. I wasn't sure if he'd even open the email, but it didn't bounce back. And about a day later, he responded. And he said, first off, I don't know how you figured out my email. Second, what an on-point message. I've been talking with my team about how we have this void. No one knows how to fill it. The idea that you put forth in that message is exactly what we need to do. I'd love to invite you out to Toronto next week so we can sit down, break bread, and see if we can work together. In Toronto, I was there at his office. We were sitting down having a conversation. This is like one of the living legends in the space of personal development. And in that conversation, we literally shook hands, and I ended up building the thing that filled that void for him. And we've been friends ever since. Well, that was before there was this thing called cold outbound. So I call that Hail Mary marketing, where I literally would just like throw a Hail Mary in like a football game, hoping that somebody was going to catch it in the end zone. We were going to win the Super Bowl. But now there's this thing called cold outbound, and it's being really overutilized in many ways. I'm sure you're on the receiving end of it, and you're like, does anyone think that actually works? So I'm going to share how to do it in a really authentic way that you're going to love. So the first thing to realize is there's no such thing as too much in cold outbound, but you definitely don't want to come across as gimmicky. Stay cool. I mean, if you've been on the receiving end of one of those like really quirky cold outbound messages, whether it's direct message on LinkedIn or even an email, where someone's like holding up like a really weird thing with like your name on it, like as if they actually somehow put your name on that really weird thing, it's just inauthentic. I mean, just keep it real. Like when I think of cold outbound, that means that I don't know the person I'm reaching out to. So the first thing I always do is try to find some point of intersection so it's not cold anymore, so I can get a warm introduction to someone that I believe I can have a win-win with. But assuming I can't, what I want to do is act like I already know them. So I send them a message with no images, no like pictures of me, nothing quirky, and it's a very authentic message around what I believe that I can do with them to produce a win-win outcome. And it's really authentic. It's not copy-paste, it's not quirky, it's authentic, it's real. It feels like I already know them. So when they open up that email, they think they know me already just based on how I framed it. And there's no such thing as too much. So like spend the time, write it the right way. It can even be a longer message if you want. If you really believe that you're going to produce a positive outcome with that person, I'd rather see you go deep than wide with your cold outbound efforts. This is the exact approach I took when I did door-to-door sales when I was 19 years old in Manhattan and Brooklyn. I was told the only way to get 1 sale per day was to go to 100 doors. Well, 100 doors meant that I was going to hustle, not build any relationships whatsoever. I was going to churn through each of these small business owners, hoping that one of them was going to give me the time of day to actually sign up for my merchant processing or get started in the first place. And as a result, I felt that I wasn't going deep, but I was going wide. And then I took a totally different approach. And I said, I'm going to see 6 doors a day. And that's all that I saw. And guess what happened? I was getting 3 sales every day because I actually got to know the person. I spent time digging in. So I'd rather see your cold outbound efforts not be one based on the volume of people, but the depth of the relationship, and spend the time to craft the message. There's no such thing as too much, but you don't want to come across as quirky, but rather just stay cool, stay you. So the second more tactical thing to do in the space of cold outbound is most likely you're going to be sending people emails that you're finding on LinkedIn. There's all different tools to figure out what their email address is. And what you want to do is you want to be persistent with them. If you really believe that you could help them get to where you believe they want to get to faster and there's a win-win outcome there, you got to persist. It's not about one message. It might be about 27 messages over a 4-year time frame. And I've been known to do that, One of my closest friends in life is someone that I reached out to probably like 40 times over 5 years, and he just never responded. And then one random day, he sent me a Facebook message, and he said, I've received every email that you've sent. I just counted, there's 42 of them over the past 4 years. And if I don't give you 5 minutes of time just to hear you out, I'm gonna get another 42 messages from you over the next 4 years. So I have 5 minutes tomorrow at this time. Let's just say hi to each other. Well, that 5 minutes has turned into a deep friendship. He's an investor in companies with me. We have like this kindred spirit bond because I saw a way that I could help him get to where he wanted to get to faster. Remember step one, I went deep. I went deep versus wide. So the key now when you're doing your follow-up to people that you're reaching out to cold is that there's a good chance they're not going to respond the first or second or third or even 10th time because your name isn't registering for them and you're falling into the sea of cold outbounders. So somehow you're going to have to rise up. So the way that you rise up is that you use previous communication threads that you sent to them if they haven't replied to you yet, and you hit reply all. But you want to go back in time. So don't just stay on the same thread. Start new threads with new subject lines, and then go back to a thread from a year earlier, hit reply all on that thread. And what you're going to start doing is you're going to start showing up in their inbox, some threaded, some new. It's going to resurface original messages that you send that they may or may not have read, but it's going to dramatically increase the chance that they respond. And that's your only goal. They respond, they are willing to have a conversation with you so that you can take the next step with them. So the third step, in order to just become more effective, more authentic, and really enjoy the cold outbound game, is to expect your outcome every time you hit send. So when I was 21 years old, I read this book. It was called The New Wellness Revolution, and it was about how the wellness industry was going to become the next trillion-dollar industry. And the author of the book was Paul Zane-Pilzer. And health and wellness at that time and to this day was one of my greatest passions. So the book got me excited, not so much because the industry was growing so quickly, but like what would happen to humanity when the health and wellness industry hit over $1 trillion. Like we'd be a healthier place to live. So I just enjoyed the book deeply. I wanted to acknowledge Paul for his work, but I didn't know Paul. Paul at the time was a very successful man. I mean, he had multiple tech exits. He had multiple health companies. He actually just recently launched, at the time, this was a very novel thing, an HRA, so a health reimbursement account. And he was like a mover and shaker in the health insurance industry at that point. So I didn't necessarily see a place for us to work together, but I did enjoy his work and I wanted to acknowledge him. So I put together an email. And once again, I did not know his email address because there weren't tools like that at the time. So I guessed 14 different emails for Paul Zane-Pilzer. I did Paul at Zane.com. I did Paul Zane-Pilzer at Zane.com. I mean, every single version of the email address I figured out. And then I sent that same message, heartfelt message. Remember what I've said before, there's no such thing as too much. Just don't be quirky. There's no weird pictures of me holding up a sign saying, Paul, I love you, or holding his book and pointing at it. Like I didn't do any of that stuff. Just an authentic message in plain text. And I sent the message, and 13 of the 14 bounced back within seconds, and one seemed to have been circulating around the world, and potentially it was going to land in his inbox and he would read it. I ended up going to the gym that evening, and as I opened up my phone at the gym just to see if I got any emails, Paul responded. And similar to the other person I mentioned earlier, the first point was, I have no idea you figured out my email. Second, thank you for your note. You are on point with where you are and where you're going in your career. Your desire to create a corporate wellness program is exactly what's needed. I don't know how to support you right now, and I don't think you can support me, just 'cause I'm really focused on health care and trying to turn health care into not away from sick care into actual health and wellness care. But let's just be in touch. And I just want to tell you again, thank you so much for the note. Well, that I expected. When I hit send, I expected I was going to get a response. It was a non-negotiable for me. Paul was going to read the message, appreciate the message, and respond. I expected that I was now a friend to him. I was in his orbit. And over the years, I've communicated with Paul and I've kept him abreast of all the things that I've done. One of the other things that happened is that Paul introduced me to a dear friend of mine named Dr. Patrick Gentempo. And Patrick and I had a chance to work together for many years. We did a lot of great things in the chiropractic and health industry because I expected that when I sent that message, I was going to get a response. I expected that the response was going to be warm and welcoming. I expected that as a result of that, there was going to be some win-win outcome that took place, and the third win would be for the world. I expected the outcome, and you need to as well. The fourth thing you need to do is that you're going to get meetings. Like that's just without question. Remember, you're expecting the outcome. So when you get your meeting, whether it's going to be through Zoom or a phone call or maybe even in person, like I had when I flew out to Toronto, you have to take 100% responsibility for the outcome. if you show up to that call and you're hoping that the other person who does not know you, who has only read a message from you, who probably gets every day 50 messages just like, but for some reason they responded to yours and they agreed to schedule with you, if you expect them to steward that conversation to a place where there's going to be a win, then you're wasting their time and you're wasting your time. So you need to show up and you need to own that conversation. You need to drive that conversation. You need to fill the space within that conversation. So you need to collect data to ensure you're going to speak into the listening of the person. So when you speak into their listening, they're going to feel like you can complete every sentence, you can complete every hope, you complete every dream, that you were the missing link in their life. Well, the only way you can do that is to ask the right questions from the start. So when you get on that call, you're taking 100%. What I tell our co-founders in our portfolio companies is you have to fill 110% of the room. So picture that Zoom room, if it's on Zoom or Google Meet, or if it's in person, that you're literally consuming 110% of that space. That's how you can take 100% responsibility of the outcome. So you want to understand 3 key things within their world. What are they most proud of? Those are the past things that have transpired. What are they most excited about? That's their present, and what's their vision for the future. So even if when you show up to the call, they're kind of abrupt with you, like, oh, listen, I took the call, I don't know why I even did it, I get 50 messages like this every day, for some reason you're stood out, tell me what you want. Well, what you want is to understand their past, their present, and their future. And you have to collect that data. If you go directly into your offer without collecting that information, and you still get the outcome, that was by chance. But if you collect the information, and then you can speak into their listening, it dramatically increases the likelihood of you producing that win-win outcome. But you need to fill the space. You need to take the responsibility. You need to ensure that whatever is agreed to on that conversation is then what transpires in a very prompt time frame. Because remember, you're the one reaching out to them because you see something that they don't see yet. They don't see it yet. You saw something, which is why you reached out to schedule a conversation. You're on a call to collect data just to make sure that your assumption is correct. As you collect the data, it's going to validate or invalidate your assumption. Assuming it's validated, you're then going to speak into their listening because you collected all that information. You're going to then drive that conversation to a space where there's a next step that you are going to drive. And if anything less than that shows up, you wasted their time and you wasted your time. No one is going to steward you to the outcome. But when you take 100% responsibility for the outcome, you dramatically increase the chance of getting the outcome. And the 5th thing in the space of cold outbound is going to be very repetitious to what I just said before, but I'm saying it because I want to reiterate how critical this is. You must produce a win-win outcome. And it might mean they win before you. You still need to win because it's critical that you're also putting points on the board, but it must be win-win. If you're showing up to cold outbound and someone feels there's an ulterior motive there, somebody feels that it's just about you, somebody feels that it's insincere, A, the universe will punish you. It's going to steal from your karma bucket, and your cold outbound efforts are going to just fall flat. Guaranteed. B, this person is going to become even more cynical and more skeptical of cold outbound, which is really a disservice to the world, because there's probably somebody else that really has a great offer for them, but because you showed up the way you did, they're not going to entertain somebody else's offer that could change their life and change the world. So take a lot of responsibility in this, 100% responsibility. Win-win. I used to talk with this when I was in the chiropractic profession, and it's a really incredible lesson for all of us. So the average chiropractor over the course of the day will see 30 to 40 patients. The more active, high volume offices could see as much as 100 patients in one day. And if you think about it, that over the course of a day, let's just say it's 50 patients, there's 50 different people that are going to get an adjustment from that chiropractor. So if for some reason a chiropractor is tired or isn't focused for 1 or 2 of those patients, it doesn't really matter. They have 48 others where they can be really intentional and deliver that adjustment. But the challenge is this: each of those patients only has 1 adjustment that day. Just 1 adjustment. And if their adjustment is the one where the chiropractor isn't as intentional, they aren't as focused, they aren't as present, that might be their last adjustment for the rest of their life. Because they might say, I don't really like this chiropractic thing. So as a byproduct, they just discredit the most wonderful professional of healthcare. They just discredit it because that chiropractor didn't take 100% responsibility to ensure a win-win outcome for every single patient. Well, the same holds true with you. You're doing cold outbound for your effort, but you're also doing cold outbound within the space of cold outbound. And you want to ensure that you don't tarnish cold outbound, because there are other people that have great offers for that person as well. And if when they gave you a shot, they're not just giving you a shot, they're giving cold outbound a shot. And if you show up with an ulterior motive, there's a really good chance they never give anyone else a shot. And what a disservice to the world. It's win-win or bust. And you have to realize that. And if you take these 5 steps seriously, each and every one of them, it'll be more fun for you, more productive for you and for them, and it will lead to what both of you desire, which is win-win, and that third win is the world wins as well.